All right, everyone. Today we're going to talk about hiring minors and all the rules you have to follow. Hello, welcome to Workplace Wake Up. I'm Jen Shaw. Every week, I spend about 15 minutes covering key legal developments, introducing you to interesting guests, and providing some entertainment to start your workday. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Oh my gosh, how did it get to be the middle of May? I don't understand how fast everything is going. This is crazy. We are almost in summertime. And what that means is our kids are going to be out of school. My daughter, Ella, is looking for a job. She is not yet 16. She will be 15 and a half this summer. So she has started looking for a job, which got me thinking, all right, if you're going to hire minors, what do you need to do? So that's what we're going to talk about here this morning. When we're talking about hiring minors, it's very important to understand that California law tightly regulates how you can do it, what hours they can work, and what documentation you need. There's a reason for that. Minors have very specific needs. We want them to be safe. We don't want them to be overworked. So the legislature here in California has been pretty specific about things that need to be done when we're hiring minors, okay? Now, first thing I want you to understand is work permits, okay? Before you employ a minor, you must ensure they have a valid work permit. Now, there's two things you need to think about. First of all, there is a document called Statement of Intent to Employ Minor and Request for Work Permit. This is a form that both the minor and you are going to complete that will make sure that everybody's on the same page about what the job's going to be, what's the rate of pay going to be, how is all this going to come about, all right? Then, once you have that document completed, the minor takes the document to the school and they get the work permit. It's called the Permit to Employ and Work. They must have this permit to be able to work for you. And when the Department of Labor or the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement or the Bureau of Field Enforcement folks from the DLSE come to your door and they say, we're going to do an inspection, they're going to ask you if you employ any minors. And if you do, you're going to have to show them the work permits. So you want to make sure not only that the minor gets the work permit, but also you have that available in the work site for them. Okay, it's very important that they can look at their own work permit so they can see what the terms and conditions are. And then again, if you've got somebody from the government who wants to come see it, you've got that document ready to roll. Now, one of the things that can get people in trouble is this concept of an emancipated minor. Somebody who has been declared free of parental supervision before they're 18 years of age. Remember, that is what we consider to be a minor, someone under the age of 18. Somebody who is emancipated by the court, who is treated as an adult essentially before the age of 18, they can apply for a work permit without getting their parents' permission, but they still need the work permit and they're subject to all child labor laws. So the only thing that's different with an emancipated minor is that they do not need to get the parental permission to obtain the work permit, all right? Now, if a school tells you, well, we're busy, we can't issue the work permit for 3 weeks, here's a phrase I like. Is there any chance, okay, is there any chance you might be able to do it sooner? My daughter's looking forward to working. The summer's starting in a few weeks. I'd really like to get it sooner. Is there any chance I could do that? That thing, is there any chance? That really works for me in so many areas. I asked a flight attendant the other day when I was flying, Martha, is there any chance for an upgrade? And she looked at me, she goes, well, actually, yeah, there is. Right? I have no idea why it works, but it does. So if you're getting a delay or your kid is trying to work with the office at school and the office is being difficult or not giving them the information they need, just ask your child to say something like, is there any chance that this could be expedited? Or if you have to, you could call and ask that. I like, by the way, the idea of these kids advocating for themselves. So I'd prefer that we as parents not get involved. but let's coach our kids to use these sort of magic phrases like, is there any chance? Okay, now once you have the work permit, understand that there are very specific work hours and restrictions for employees, minor employees, okay? Minors who are aged 14 and 15, okay, they can work up to 3 hours a day on a school day and 8 hours a day on a non-school day. They can work up to 18 hours per week during school weeks and 40 hours per week during non-school weeks. Now, obviously, you've got to plan ahead for summer work, right, if you're a parent, because you are going to need the permit when school is in session. Many schools are pretty much closed during the month of July, and after school's out, they're gone. So you've got to plan ahead to get this permit. If they're between 14 and 15, remember, you've got 3 hours on a school day and 8 hours on a non-school day, up to 18 hours during school weeks and 40 hours during non-school weeks, okay? Now, if they're between 16 and 17, okay, so they're still minors, right? They're under age 18. They can work up to 4 hours on a school day and up to 8 hours on a non-school day. And they can work up to 48 hours per week. Now, that is crazy to me. That is a lot of time. But I remember back when I was in high school, I would work 8 hours on a Saturday, 8 hours on a Sunday. That gave me 16 hours, right? And then I could work 4 hours or so every day during the week. It's a lot because I don't know how you're supposed to get your homework done. So the up to doesn't mean your child should be scheduled for that amount of time. And it certainly doesn't mean you as the employer should be expecting these kids to work that number of hours, particularly when school is in session, okay? Notice that for the minors age 16 and 17, there's no different on the weekly maximum of hours. The weekly maximum is 48 hours, whether it's during a school week or a non-school week, all right? So very important to understand, once you get that permit, you are subject to these scheduling restrictions for your minors. What about prohibited occupations? Okay, there are certain things that minors are not supposed to be doing. They're not supposed to be operating heavy machinery. They're not supposed to be working with hazardous substances. And they're not supposed to be exposed to extreme temperatures or loud noises. Now, I want you to really think about this. Operating heavy machinery makes it sound like they can't drive a forklift. You know what else they can't do? Operate a toaster oven. Operate a baler or a compactor. So you want them to go squish up all of the cardboard boxes? The minor's not the person to do that, okay? Anything that seems remotely dangerous, they're not supposed to be doing. This chemical or hazardous substance issue is important too, because if somebody works in a nursery or somebody works in retail, there could be a lot of different substances. Make sure that if they're moving these substances, they're all wrapped up, right? You know, they're bottled in protective packaging. You don't want your minor dealing with anything toxic or anything that is hazardous, all right? The extreme temperatures, remember that the idea is that these kids are going to be a little more susceptible to things like heat stroke or frostbite, so be very careful about that. The loud noises, of course, our hearing is a precious resource that we have, and we want to be careful we're not jeopardizing anybody's hearing. So when you think about hiring minors, a lot of our clients say, I'm not doing it. It's just not worth it. I have to get a work permit. I'm limited on hours. What if my managers don't obey the hours? It's a problem, by the way. You know, I don't know how to train them. I have a knife in the deli. I don't know how to keep them away from the knife. It's just too much effort. I understand that, but to me, it's unfortunate. These kids need the opportunity to work, all right? I was just reading an article about Prince William and Princess Kate, and they want their kids to have regular teenage jobs, right? They want their kids to work. And I get it, right? I mean, they don't need to work. They don't need the money, obviously, but it's a responsibility. I mean, I've worked at Leatherby's Ice Cream and Mrs. Fields Cookies and a taqueria, Marie's Tacos. You learn so much about coming to work on time, being responsible, doing what you're asked to do, cleaning your messes, One of my managers at Leatherby's used to tell me, if there's time to lean, there's time to clean. And I'll tell you what, when I'm on the phone with a client, sometimes without even realizing it, I will go get a little dust rag and I'll start dusting my desk because I feel like I'm standing still, right? I'm talking on the phone. I'm absolutely paying full attention to the client and I can dust without even thinking about it because that's how I was trained. Okay, waiting tables, I was trained to multitask. I can do more things, more than one thing at once. So working is important for these kids. So please don't take the perspective that it's too much effort to hire a minor. I know it's work, but we can do it, okay? And it will really make a difference to that minor's life, right? Not only giving them spending money, but also teaching them responsibility. The other thing is you would be amazed how much they add to the workplace. I mean, when we have had minors who want to have an internship in the firm or want to do something with us, they just bring a breath of fresh air. They're engaged, they're energetic, they're happy to be involved. They know it's a privilege, that you didn't owe it to them. You can really get a lot out of that kind of a relationship. So I don't want you to think that, all right, we're not going to hire minors because it's too much effort. Now, remember, one of the other things you have to do when you hire a minor is you have to train your managers and supervisors to be able to recognize when there is a problem that they need help with, right? So it's very important that you are looking at mandated reporter training. Mandated reporter training is very important. If you have 5 or more employees and you hire a minor, you have to provide training on the identification and reporting of child abuse and neglect to HR folks, to folks who are supervising the minors. They have to be provided that training. So make sure that you are offering that mandated reporter training. This is not training that is complicated. It can be done pretty quickly, but you've got to make sure you get that done. Also remember, if you happen to be involved in the entertainment industry, there is a special entertainment work permit that's going to be required. And there's also some training on sexual harassment prevention that you need to deal with. If you're a public agency that is subject to the Fair Labor Standards Act, you also have to obtain a certificate of age for your minors. Also remember that there are some youth employment programs that may be willing to pay for some of the wages of these minors, so it can be a good financial decision for you to hire minors. And then the other thing I want you to think about is just this idea of how are you going to integrate these minors into your work environment, right? We've already got multiple generations working in the work area. So I want you to think about how are you going to integrate these kids so they feel like they're part of the workplace, that they've got some growth opportunities, that they've got some learning opportunities. You don't want to just hire a minor, put him in the corner and forget about him. That's not the point. You want to be sure you're giving them a real solid opportunity to learn the responsibility, to get there on time, everything we've talked about. So if you're going to hire minors, and I hope you do, make sure there's somebody in your organization, in the HR universe, who's responsible for dealing with the work permit, compliance with the hours, ensuring that the managers and supervisors understand what the hour restrictions are, making sure you do that mandated reporter training, and then making sure that somebody is checking in with the minor regularly to make sure that everything is going okay. If you do all of that, I think you and the minor are going to have a wonderful experience. Thank you so much for joining me. Go out and have a great day, everyone. I'll see you next time. Workplace Wake Up, including our guests and hosts, do not provide legal advice in this podcast. Do not act upon any of the information discussed in this podcast without first consulting a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to spread the word, please share it with others. post about it on social media, and or rate and review it. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, and email us at info@shawlawgroup.com.